Caitlin Clark, the Time Magazine Athlete of the Year, joined the New Heights podcast with Travis and Jason Kelsey to talk WNBA, NBA, NFL and more on Thursday. Clark discussed the subject of the NBA's declining ratings with a hint of sarcasm. Clark pushed back on what she felt was the view of NBA players from the average fan's perspective that the game has changed or become soft. After sharing her thoughts, Travis asked Clark what she thought about adding 4-point line. "I love that, let's do it. That's a great idea. Hey, NBA Commissioner, Adam Silver 4-point line." Travis then pushed the envelope a little more, asking Clark, mostly in jest, about a possible hockey-style fight once per game. Clark went with it, 2-minute penalty box. Then you can come back in, you don't get ejected. Clark went with it, 2-minute penalty box. Then you can come back in, you don't get ejected. In talking about the NBA, Clark believes the game's skill level has changed. "The physicality of the league has changed a lot," Clark said. "Maybe people want more beef, physicality, and people think it's gotten soft. But I think that's also because the skill has changed. That's what's great about basketball, it's always evolving. It's going to be different from when Michael Jordan played, and it's going to be different in 10 years than it is now." The 2025 WNBA season begins this spring, and Clark's year with the Indiana Fever tips off on May 17 against the Chicago Sky. The WNBA enjoyed historic ratings growth this past year as rising stars like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese and Cameron Brink brought massive audiences with them over from college. But their NBA counterparts have not enjoyed similar ratings growth, or any growth at all for that matter, and Clark is a bit concerned. Appearing on the New Heights show, Clark addressed the NBA's down ratings and gave her thoughts on what might be causing it. Clark believes that some NBA players give off the impression that they're not trying hard during the regular season games, making people think that the league has gone soft. "If we get boxing gloves for NBA games, then Isaiah Stewart about to enter GOAT convos," one user joked. "Create a 4-point line, wait 10 years, let the nerds do the math and figure out that a 3-point shot is actually a bad shot," wrote another. "I've been asking a lot of people why they think they're down. I feel like the average basketball fan doesn't understand how good NBA players are, and they think it looks like they're not trying. I promise you they're trying. They're just like so good. Maybe they just need more beef and physicality and people think it's gotten soft. But I also think the skills just changed. That's what's great about the game, it's always evolving," Clark said. Clark and the Kelsey brothers then went through a couple of suggestions for how to improve the game, ranging from the introduction of a 4-point line to a hockey-style penalty box that doesn't result in an ejection. Fans were somewhat amused by the idea, admitting that there could be some good entertainment value in seeing on-court fights and a 4-point line. "Loved this episode so much. It was great to hear Caitlin's perspective on so many different topics in sports. Her love and passion for the game really showed. I also loved that she asked the guys so many questions. Great episode to kick off 2025. A third wrote on X. "One thing seems certain, the NBA needs to do something to stem the loss in ratings, and fast." Moving from the Bay Area, the veteran coach of 20-plus years had an immediate comp for his new talisman, NBA great Steph Curry. "You're never going to believe this, but we are coaching a player that will become the female version of Steph Curry in many people's minds," Babanot recalled telling a friend over the phone in 2016 in an interview with Athlon Sports. Head coach Kristen Meyer saw a confidence and basketball IQ that set Clark apart from her teenage peers, as well as a fierce competitive streak. That sometimes led her to call out teammates or referees. She understood that it wasn't good. It didn't help the team. It didn't help her play better, Meyer revealed. But also, she gets so into the moment that she can't help herself. Teammate Ella McVeigh, who went on to play softball for the University of Michigan, said Clark was always 3 or 4 steps ahead of her teammates and officials, which often led to dropped passes or missed calls. "Because she's so hard to guard, the opponent is fouling her pretty much every single possession, at least 1 or 2 times, because she's just so much more skilled and quicker and knows how to get people off balance," Meyer said. "But also, as a ref, you can't call every single one, or, the game doesn't get to be played, right?" Clark was also already approaching the game like a pro. She turned up early to do extra shooting and had already watched film on her opponents before the team sessions. "I feel like all the greats kind of have that tendency where it's like, when they flip the switch, they're in kill mode," McVeigh added. But not only does Caitlin have that quality, but she also has the quality of being a sister, being a daughter, being a friend to a lot of the people in her life. "Something I think people need to recognize is that she's just a person. She never asked to come out of a game," Meyer added. Usually, when she'd come out, it only took about 20 seconds before she'd just kind of turn and say, "Can I go back in now?" I've never met someone who loves the game as much as her. Clark has been playing in front of sold-out arenas, facing hecklers and double blocks since she was 16. But whether it was high school, college, or the WNBA, nobody has figured out a way to stop her yet. The WNBA Rookie of the Year's dedication to improving her game means she never stands still no matter what is thrown at her. She earned praise from fans for deciding to sit out of the lucrative Unrivaled league in order to come back fresh for her sophomore campaign. She has been putting in the work in the gym and looks to have added muscle in recent training videos, which should leave the Indiana Fever Guards' opponents with a case of the chills. Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's Rookie of the Year, has confessed that she felt lucky to have been overlooked for Team USA selection for last year's Paris Olympics, as it provided her with a much-needed respite. Prior to her WNBA career, Clark was already a sensation in women's basketball, having shattered numerous records with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Despite her stellar performances, she was surprisingly left out of the 12-player roster for the Olympics. Looking back on the omission in 2024, Clark expressed relief at the chance to take a step back, stating, "It's going to be good for me to do my own thing and have my own space. I kind of want to just stay out of the spotlight." On the New Heights podcast with NFL stars Travis and Jason Kelce, Clark further discussed the unexpected advantage of the Olympic break, which allowed her to rest during a demanding season. "We had to pause the WNBA season because the 12 girls go and play in the Olympics and everybody else, you're not doing much. I got like a month off, which I really needed obviously, because I had been playing basketball for like a year straight. But, it's obviously so much different from the NFL or the NBA." Team USA coach Cheryl Reeve has been candid about the limited control she holds in selecting the national team. Revealing her stance, Reeve stated, "I think what people don't get about it is the coach of the national team truly has no power in the selection of the team." She also expressed frustration that Minnesota Lynx' ace Kalen McBride was overlooked, despite standout camp performances, sharing, "I thought K-Mac had a tremendous camp and should have gone with us to Sydney and had no indication that anyone felt differently, especially from our staff and some of the committee was in our meetings." Adding to the disappointment, Reeve elaborated, "It felt as if we all felt the same that K-Mac had a great camp, and not that she'd make the final roster because she still had to go to Sydney and make that final cut, but I learned at the 11th hour that they cut my player. And so I said to K-Mac, if there's ever a time for people to understand that the coach has no say in it, this is one of those times." Star athlete Clark also discussed the rapid shift from college basketball to the pros, noting the nearly non-existent break in between. "I think it was good a little bit too. You don't have time to overthink things, it's just like boom, boom, boom and on to the next. But at the same time, I feel like I never really ended the chapter of college, I feel like I left and WNBA happened. You don't have a lot of time to think about it, so I think that's definitely the weirdest part of women's professional basketball and college basketball too. It's just that change, but that's obviously how it has to be too." Some have blamed the significant increase in three-pointers across the league. Some think that media coverage of the actual product has gotten too negative. Many have maintained that a rise in player injuries, and stars' unreliable availability, is to blame. Others have suggested that the league begin play on Christmas rather than in October in order to avoid such a heavy overlap with football. Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark, one of the biggest names in all of basketball, also wants to know the real reason why fewer people are tuning into the NBA. The near-unanimous Rookie of the Year said in a New Heights podcast appearance that she has been on the hunt to get to the bottom of why ratings are lower this season than in years past. "I've been asking a lot of people about this, and why they think they're down," she said. Clark has her own theory about why fewer people are watching the NBA this season, and when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. "Honestly, I feel like the average basketball fan doesn't understand how good NBA players are, and they think it looks like they're not trying," Clark said. "I promise you they're trying. They're just, like, so good. That's why it looks like they're not trying." A common complaint has been that players don't play as hard or as physical today as they used to, but that complaint oftentimes doesn't take into account just how much better offensive players have gotten. Many NBA teams play 4 or 5 three-point shooters at once, so defenders cannot overplay drives the way that they used to. Clark also acknowledged the theory that early season basketball viewership simply suffers because of the sport it is up against. Both college football and the NFL typically broadcast competing games in the first few months of the NBA season. "It's hard for me to put my finger on why it's gone down. It's also competing against football right now, so you have to take that into consideration. Football is America's favorite thing.